Today we're going to work on basic skills just to make sure everyone understands them. And if you do, this should not be a problem for you. All right, so to add or subtract decimals, the main thing you want to know is to line the decimals up. And you're going to have to make sure you take notes, and you will have a notebook check at the end of summer school. And all these notes must be in it. All right, that's the main thing. To add or subtract decimals, the decimals must be lined up. If you don't see a decimal in a number, the decimal is also at the end of that number. Say, for example, on number 3, you don't see a decimal in 79, the decimal will actually be at the end, okay? But we'll get to that in just a minute. So I'm going to take these two numbers and make sure the decimal is lined up. So the 3 goes underneath the 5 and the 8 goes underneath the 7. And the empty spaces can be filled in with zeros. I'm going to add these, okay? But as you can see, my decimals are lined up. So I just add and bring down the decimal. So the answer to this is 49 and 52 hundredths. Again, the main thing is to make sure the decimals are lined up. I'm going to take this on number 2, put my decimal so that 0 is in front of the decimal. So the 0 will sit there, then the 8, the 2, the 1, and the 5, and fill in empty spaces with zeros, and I can add these up. Bring down the decimal, and I don't need this 0. I need to bring down that 0. Let me go back and do something. I don't like the way these are lined up. That's much better. Now everything is lined up perfectly. Those two are lined up, those two are lined up, those two. The decimals are lined up. The 1 and the 0, the 9 and the 0, and the 1 and the 0. That's fine. Let's take a look at number 3. And number 3, you're going to have this. It doesn't matter which decimal goes on top either. Now, when you subtract, the larger one or the larger number has to go on top. But this is adding. And of course, you didn't see a decimal in 79. So if you don't see a decimal in a number, put it at the end. So put my decimal so I know the 9 is in front of the decimal. So the 9 sits there, and then the 7. And the empty spaces get filled in with zeros. So that's 626 and 3/10. Okay, and that's how you add decimals. Subtracting decimals is pretty much the same thing, but you want to make sure the larger number is on top, and you want to make sure the decimals are also lined up. Fill in the empty spaces with zeros, and then just start subtracting. So the answer here is 42 and 32 hundredths. 590 is bigger than a 0. You look at the numbers in front of the decimal to tell which one is bigger. 590 is bigger than a 0. So 590 is going to go on top. The 0 goes in front of the decimal, then the 8, the 2, and the 5. Above the 5, put a 0. Below the 9, put a 0. Below the 5, put a 0. All empty spaces get filled in with zeros. You're going to have to regroup here because you can't start off with a 0 and take away 5. So I'm going to borrow from the 7 to make it a 6, and this becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 6 minus 2 is 4. And I'm going to stop because I can't start off with 0 and take away 8. There's nothing to borrow from here, so I go here to the 9. Go to the 9. 9 becomes an 8, and this becomes a 10. Now I can borrow from the 10 to make that a 10. I borrow from the 10, it becomes a 9. So this is 2, 9, 8, and I can say 5 minus 0 is 5. If you need help with regrouping, and you know you do, you need to see me. So I need you to raise your hand and tell me you need help with regrouping. Or just at some point when this video is over with, I need you to let me know that you don't understand how to subtract on number 5 if you don't know how to regroup. In other words, you don't know how to do this right here. All right, let's take a look at 6. 6, there's no decimal in 79, so put it there. The 9 is in front of the decimal, so it goes there, and then the 7 in front of the 9. The empty spaces get filled in with zeros. 3 minus 0 is 3. Bring down the decimal. You cannot start off with 7 and take away 9. So I regroup. This becomes a 3, and I add 10 more to this. 10 more to 7 is 17. 17 minus 9 is 8. I cannot start off with 3 and take away 7. So I have to borrow from the 5 and make it a 4. That becomes a 13. 13 minus 7 is 6. And bring down the 4. It's 468 and 3/10. And that's how you subtract. Again, if you have problems with regrouping, I'm going to need you to let me know. All right. Make sure you have that down. I'm going to erase this and work on multiplication. So again, to add and subtract, the main thing is to line the decimals up. All right, once we get to 7 and 8, it's multiplication. To multiply decimals, you write this little note. Or when multiplying decimals, you need to count the number of numbers behind the decimals, plural, because you got 2 decimals, the decimal here and the decimal there. When multiplying decimals, count the number of numbers behind the decimals, plural, and this will be the number of numbers that need to be behind the decimal in your answer. And you make sure you write this down, because as we have explained, you got a quiz at the end of this unit after you practice. Okay, at the end of this video and then the practice, you'll have a quiz. Because the first thing we're going to do is count the number of numbers behind the decimals. So how many numbers are behind this decimal? Well, only 1. How many numbers are behind this decimal? Well, there are 3. So that means you have a total of 4 numbers in all behind the decimals. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, what I do when I multiply decimals is I completely ignore, let me put 1 plus 3. I ignore the decimals, so I'm going to multiply this as 27 times 135. And then I know that there are 4 numbers behind the decimal in my answer. So I'm going to multiply 135 times 27. And believe it or not, I have some people that cannot multiply this, and I know it. And if you don't know how to multiply like this, you need to let me know as well. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. So basically all you're doing is covering up that 2 and multiplying by the 7. Okay, 7 times 3 is 21. And you add this number. 21 plus 3 is 24. Write the 4 and carry the 2 because you said 24. You're going to write the 4 and carry the 2. Right, 7 times 1 is 7, and then add 2 to it, you get 9. Okay, what you'll do now is erase these numbers you put here at the top. Instead of working with the 7, now you're going to multiply by the 2. But because you're multiplying by the 2 and the 2s is in the tens place, you need to start off in the tens place. Therefore, we put a placeholder here. So we're going to say 5 times 2 or 2 times 5 is 10. So you're going to write the 0 and you're going to carry the 1. All right, 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 1 is 7. Just write 7. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Then add it up. See what we have. But there are supposed to be 4 numbers after the decimal in your answer if there are 4 numbers after the decimal in your problem. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal if I put the decimal here. And I am allowed to put a 0 in the front. And that is all you do. Let's take a look at number 8. If you look at number 8, there are 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal. So I know there should be three numbers behind the decimal in my answer, okay? So I'm going to multiply this as 12 times 28. Let's work on that. 28 times 12. Let me erase some of this so I have room, okay? Everybody should have already written that note down. All right, so I'm just going to ignore the 1. Start multiplying by the 2. 2 times 8 is 16. So you're going to write the 6 and carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4. And add that 1, which is 5. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, so I'm multiplying by the 2. Now multiply by the 1. Erase everything else. But the 1 is in a tens place, so this I start here. So this is a 0. 1 times 8 is 8. And 1 times 2 is 2. And add that up, I have nothing else. 6, 13, carry the 1, 3. And there are 3 numbers behind the decimal, so the decimal goes there. I'm going to make up one more. I want you to add this to your notes. Okay, so if I look, there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers behind the decimals, okay? But I'm going to multiply this as 5 times 132. So 132 times 5. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus the 1 is 16. Write the 6 and carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Add the 1, I get 6. But there were a total of 6 numbers behind the decimal. As you can tell, you only have 3. So what you do is add 3 more zeros and then put your decimal. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers behind the decimal. I am allowed to add a 0 in the front. So this is your answer. Because that 0 is at the end, you can drop it if you want to. And that's your answer. Or you can keep that 0 that's at the end, okay? All right, make sure you have this written down. Now we're going to work on division. These are all basic skills which everyone should really know how to do already. But if you don't, we need to learn, okay? When dividing, you just scoot the decimal if you have a decimal, but 9 and 10 is not division. So we're going to do 9 here. This is what we call our dividend. So we divide into, and this is what we call our divisor. So we divide by. The dividend always goes in the house. And the divisor always goes outside of the house. You build a house when you do long division, okay? Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to have 4 into 237. And let's start dividing. So since I'm dividing by 4, I'm going to go ahead and list multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 32. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times is 40. 44, 48. And then 4 times 13 is 52, okay? I'm just going to list just a few. So now I'm going to try 4 into 2. Well, 4 won't go into 2 because the smallest multiple of 4 is 4. So now let's try 4 into 23. Well, I can get 4 into 23. So the closest I can get to 23 without going over is at 16. That means I had to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 times, or 4 times 4. Say 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, so I can get 4 groups. I can get 4 groups of 4 out of the 23. So the 4 goes above the 23. And I'm going to subtract this number I circled, which is 16. After you subtract, you bring down. And you can always remember daddy, mama, sister, brother, and R. Daddy stands for divide. The M in mama stands for multiply. The S in sister stands for subtract. The B in brother stands for bring down. And this stands for repeat or remainder. Okay, repeat the process. So what I did is I divided 4 into 23. So I know I get 4 groups of 23 out of 4 groups of 4 out of the 23. Okay, and 4 times 4 is 16, or you can just say I circle the number 16. And then after I subtracted and got 7. Now my next step is to bring down. So bring down to 7, and then I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to start over right here. Well, how close can I get to? Hold on one second. I skipped something. I'm going to go back and redo this, okay? And some of you may have caught it, but I didn't. All right. So let me go back. I'm going to skip count by 4 again. And that's my fault. I'm sorry. 4, 8, 12, 16. I skipped the 20. 24, 28, 32, 36. That's what I skipped. 40, 44, 48, and so forth, okay? So I'm going to say how many groups of 4 can I get out of 23? Well, actually, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. And 5 groups is 20. So this is the division part. I can get 5 groups. So that's the division part. Now I multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. Well, that's the number you circled anyway. That's what you're going to subtract. So you're going to subtract 20. And then you're at the bring down part. So you're going to bring down to 7. Not a 3, but a 7. And then you're going to repeat the process. Well, how close can you get to 37 without going over? Well, you can go to 36, not 32. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 groups. So you can get 9 groups out of that. 9 groups would be 36. And then your remainder is 1 when you subtract, okay? But what happens if I repeat this process and I don't get a remainder of 0? Well, you just add a decimal and a 0. Add a decimal and a 0, and that decimal that you added will go up. So it'll go up here. Okay, now I have something to bring down. So after I subtract, I got a 1. Subtract, get a 1. And then I can bring down this number that I added, which is a 0. Then you just repeat the process again. Well, how close can I get to 10 without going over? So that will put me right here. So that's only 2 groups of 4. So a 2 goes there above the number you brought down. And 2 groups of 4 ended up being 8, so I subtract 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Well, I still don't have a remainder of 0, so I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. After you subtract, you bring down. We'll add a 0 and bring it down. So then I'm going to repeat the process now. So how close can I get to 20 without going over? Well, right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 4. 5 groups of 4 is 20. Now I get a remainder of 0 with nothing left to bring down. So I know the answer to this is 59 and 25 hundredths. Some people would have written 59 and 1/4. And let me show you how. Instead of adding a decimal and a 0, let me go back and do this. When you said, how close can I get to 37 without going over? That was 36. That was 9 groups. And you subtracted. You could have written the answer as a mixed number. 59 is your whole number. And then instead of adding a decimal and a 0, you could have written as a mixed number. Gone here to the 1. And then put it over the 4. So 59 and 1/4. You can also leave it as a mixed number. I prefer you learn how to write them as decimals, okay? Maybe we'll do mixed numbers and decimals, just to make sure you can do both, all right? All right, let's look at the next one. I'm sure you hear SpongeBob in the back. I'm sorry. That's my son watching it. Okay, so this number goes in the house. This one goes outside. I'm going to do number 10 here. And I'm going to list some multiples of 15. 15, 30. Add 15 to that, I get 45. Add 15 to that, I get 60. Add 15 to that, I get 75. Add 15 to this, I get 90. 15 to that, I get 105. Okay, I'm just listing a few. So I start off dividing. 15 won't go into 6 because the smallest multiple is 15. So I try 15 and a 62. Well, how close can I get to 15? I meant to 62 without going over. That's going to be a 60. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 15. So put the 4 there and subtract the 60. 60 is 15 times 4. Once you subtract, your next step is to bring down. Bring down the 3. And then you're going to repeat this process. So now how close can you get to 23 without going over? Well, you can only get to a 15. So that's one group. So I'm going to subtract that 15 I circle. And then after subtract, I bring down. I'm going to bring down the 4. And I'm going to repeat the process. Now I say, how close can I get to 84 without going over? That's going to be 75. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 15. So the 5 goes there. 5 groups of 15 is 75. That's 9. Okay, I don't have anything left to bring down. So I can add a decimal and a 0, or I can write this as a mixed number. If I write it as a mixed number, it's 415. And then it goes to 9. And the 9 then goes to 15. And you can simplify this if you want to. That's 415 and 3/5. Okay. Now let's write it as a mixed number in simplest form. But if you don't want to write it as a mixed number, then what you do from this point is you add a decimal and a 0. So you have something to bring down so you can keep going. But bring that decimal up. Okay, bring down the 0. Now how many times will 15 go into 90? Exactly 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that means that we end up with 415 and 3/5, or as a decimal, 415.6. I would appreciate if you learn how to write it both ways. Make sure you're taking notes, okay? All right. This still goes in and this goes out. But the part that goes out, our divisor is a decimal. Okay, when your divisor is a decimal, you can never work a division problem like that. So what you want to do is you want your divisor to be a whole number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, some whole number, not 0.04. So what I'm going to do is scoot this to the end and make it a whole number. So if I scooted it once, twice, okay? So if I scoot that twice, the inside decimal does the same thing the outside decimal does. So if I have to scoot the outside decimal twice to make it a whole number 4, I got to scoot this twice, okay? You're not trying to make the inside number a whole number. The inside decimal is just going to copy the outside decimal. So now it's going to scoot once, twice. So the new decimal is going to be right here, not right there. And it's going to bring it straight up. So we'll end up with 982.4 and bring that decimal straight up. So we're no longer looking at this, but we're looking at this one. And I'm just going to list some multiples of 4. All right, so if I list multiples of 4, here we go. And I won't skip 20 this time. Okay? Now, what we'll do now is look at how many groups of 4 I can get out of 9. Well, the closest I can get is an 8. That's 2 groups. So 2 groups of 4 is 8. Subtract and bring down the 8. Then I repeat the process. Well, how many groups of 4 can I get out of 18? So the closest I can get is a 16. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. Notice that the 4 goes next to the 2 and also above the 8. Well, 4 groups of 4 is 16, so I subtract 16. Now just repeat the process. How many groups of 4 can I get out of 22? Well, the closest I can get here is to 20, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 4. Subtract and bring down. And then you're just going to repeat the process again. Well, how many groups of 4 can you get out of 24 now? Well, you can get exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you get a remainder of 0. So your answer to this one is 245 and 6/10 or 0.6. And that's all you do. Again, you cannot divide by a decimal. You must scoot that decimal so that it becomes a whole number, okay? Okay, let's take a look at number 12. Or you can pause the video and try 12 on your own, okay? And I know basic skills is not the most interesting thing, but everybody needs to know how to do it, okay? If you can't do the basic skills, you can't do anything else. All right, so this goes in and this goes out. I'm going to scoot this only one place to make it the whole number 5. But if I scoot that once, I'm only allowed to scoot this one once. So the decimal is now right here instead of right there. And I bring that decimal straight up. So it's going to be between the 9 and the 3. All right. So what I'll do is just kind of skip count by fives. Okay. And then I'll start dividing. I start off with how many groups of five can I get out of five? Well, obviously I can only get one. Subtract this five and then bring down the three. Now I ask myself how many groups of five can I get out of three, because you're going to repeat the process. Well, the biggest number is a five, or the smallest multiples of five. So you can't get any groups of five out of a three, so you put a zero. So once you put that zero, you can go ahead and bring down the next number, or you can say 5 times 0 is 0. Subtract and bring down the next number. Or you could have, since you put 0, you could have just brought down the 9 next to the first three. All right, now I'm going to repeat the process and see how many groups of 9 I can get out of, how many groups of 5 I can get out of 39. So without going over, I can get right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups of 5. Make sure you put the 7 above the 9. The 7 goes above the number you brought down, and I brought down a 9. Okay, so 7 groups of 5 was 35, so that's what I subtract. And then bring in the next number, which is a 3. Repeat the process. So how close can you get to 43 without going over? You go to 40, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 groups of 5. So subtract 40. And I don't have anything left. So you cannot write a mixed number with a decimal. If you already have a decimal, you have to continue to make it a decimal. So add a 0 and bring it down. And I'm going to repeat the process. What I got? To repeat the process, you just ask yourself how many groups of 5 you can get out of 30. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 groups. Subtract the 30, and now I have a remainder of 0. So my answer to this one is 107.86. All right, we're not going to be able to do all of these, guys, because it will actually be too much. But I need you to know how to um, add and subtract fractions and multiply and divide fractions, okay? So we need to know how to do this. To add and subtract fractions, you must have a common denominator. Okay? Your denominator is the bottom number of your fraction. Well, as you can tell, both of these are already 13, so I can subtract them. So just subtract the numerators, the top numbers. 11 minus 5 is 6, and keep the 13. So 11 thirteenths minus 5 thirteenths is 6 thirteenths. That's easy. Okay, always easy if they have a common denominator, okay? Now I'm going to take number 21 and work it over here. Well, look at your denominators. They're not the same. You have a 14 and you have a 7. So I make what we have call a T-chart, and you list multiples. So I'm going to list multiples of 14 and 7. I can already see I have a common multiple. You're looking for a common one. So what they have in common is a 14 in this column and a 14 in that column. Okay, so 14 is going to be your common denominator. Well, this already has a 14, so I'm going to leave it as 13 fourteenths. I'm going to change that because it already has a 14. This one has a 7 instead of a 14. So what I do is I say, well, it takes 2 groups of 7. 1, 2 to make a 14. So I multiply this 7 by 2, 2 groups of 7. Well, I just can't change the denominator and make it a 14. Also, if I change the denominator, I must change the numerator. You're multiplying the entire fraction by 2. So I do 2 groups of 7 is 14, but 2 groups of 2, or 2 times 2 is 4. Now, instead of adding 13 fourteenths plus 2 sevenths, it's 13 fourteenths plus 4 fourteenths, which is 17 fourteenths. This is known as an improper fraction. An improper fraction is when your numerator is larger than your denominator. And if that happens, you can change your answer to what we call a mixed number. To change it to a mixed number, I say you're supposed to TIBO. Top in, put the top number in the house, and the bottom number out of the house. Top in, bottom out, top in, bottom out. So I'm going to take this one, put it in, and take this one and put it outside of the house and convert it to a mixed number. All right, and how many groups of 14 can you get out of 17? So I'm looking for groups of 14, only one. When I subtract, I get 3. Don't change it to a decimal. You can if you want to, but I'm fine with changing it to a mixed number. So that 17 14 is the same as 1 and 3 over 14. And that's all you do. And let's take a look at 22. Make sure you're pausing the video and writing this down. And this video will always be available, so if you need help on the practice and you want to go back and watch a certain part, go back. So on 22, you have 8s and 6. So I'm going to make a T-chart with 8s and 6 and just skip count. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, blah, blah, blah. 6, 12, 18, 24. I'm going to stop because this has a 24 and that has a 24. So both of these are going to change to 24. So don't worry about the 5 and the 2. Just keep that. That's going to be 5 and something over 24 minus 2 and something over 24. Well, how do you figure out what that something is? Well, you just go here to 24. So that would have been 1, 2, 3 groups of 8. So I multiply the 8 by 3. Therefore, I multiply the 7 by 3. That would be 21. 7 times 3 is 21. For the 6, I needed 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 20. 4 groups of 6. 4 groups of 6 make the 24. So multiply the 1 by 4. Whatever you multiply by down here, you multiply by up here. 1 times 4 is 4. So now I have my new numbers. And all I do is subtract 21 minus 4 is 17. Keep your 24. And 5 minus 2 is 3. And that's all you do. Let's take a look at 23. There's no common denominator there. All right, so since there's no common denominator there, I'm going to do a T-chart with thirds and 6. 3, 6, 9, 12. 6, I'm going to stop because there's already a common multiple. Now, if you kept going, you would also get a 12. You could use a 12, but you don't have to, okay? If you use a 12, you would end up having to simplify. So this is going to be 4 and something over 12 plus 8 and something over 12. So to figure out that something, you just see, well, how many groups of 3 did it take to make 6? Well, 1, 2. So you multiply this by 2 and that by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Oh, gosh. We're not using 12. We're using 6. That's my fault. The common denominator is 6. I'm sorry if I confuse anybody. Common denominator is 6. It takes 2 groups of 3 to make a 6. So that's why I multiply 3 times 2 and 2 times 2. All right, how many groups of 6 did it take to make 6? Well, only 1. Well, that's all. You can do times 1 or just leave it because it's already over 6, so you keep the 5. So now 4 plus 8 is 9, and 4 plus 5 is excuse me, 4 plus 8 is 12. I'm having an off day. 4 plus 8 is 12, and 4 plus 5 is 9. But if you notice this part, the 9/6 is an improper fraction because the top number is bigger than the bottom. So I'm going to have to divide the 9/6, okay? So this will go in and that will go out. 6, 12, 18. How close can you get to 9 without going over? That's only one group of 6. Your remainder is 3. So you're going to end up with this whole number 12 plus 1 whole and then 3 6. Hold on 1 second, guys. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So what we're gonna do, I see that. So what we'll do is we'll take 12 and add it to 1. We'll end up 13 and 3 6. Just tell me about it when I finish this video. I haven't seen those in a long time. All right, so we end up with 13 and 3 6. Thank you. Okay. And then we're gonna simplify 3 6. 3 will go into 3 and 6. Okay, so it's 13 and 1/2. So you get 13 and 1/2 from that. All right, and the last thing we're going to do is multiplication and division of fractions. All right, so to multiply fractions, you just do top times top and bottom times bottom. We're almost done, guys. So multiply the top, you get 6. Multiply the bottom, you get 45. If I skip count by 3, I can get to a 6 and a 45. Okay. So we end up with 2 over 15 in simplest form. So it's 2/15.
But if they give me some body wash and we need anything else, tissue or anything, put me $100 up. I got about $40.
Okay. All right. Love you too.
Say that.
All right. So on number 25, you have division of fractions. To divide fractions, you need to keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep the first fraction the same. I'm going to change division to multiplication. And I'm going to flip this 2/3, making it 3 over 2. Okay. So it's keep, change, and flip. And that's what happens when you're dividing fractions, okay? And then you just apply the same rules for multiplication because you've changed it to a multiplication problem. So you do top times top, which is 21, and bottom times bottom, which is 16. But this is improper. So if it's improper, you divide and change it to a mixed number. Just skip counting by 16s. Well, how many groups of 16 you got? Can you get out of 21? Well, only 1. And when you subtract, you get 5 left over. So this ends up being 1 as a whole number, and then it goes to 5 over 16. So this is 1 and 5/16. But you have to remember when you're dividing fractions to keep, change, flip. When you're multiplying fractions, you just do top times top and bottom times bottom. There's no keep, change, flip on that, okay? What do you do if they're mixed numbers? Okay, if they're mixed numbers and you're multiplying or dividing, those mixed numbers must be changed to improper fractions. So I want you to write that little note and we'll be done. I'm going to let you practice in class. So put a little note. To multiply or divide mixed numbers or with mixed numbers, I want you to change them to improper fractions first. Now, if you're adding or subtracting, you don't have to change it to improper fractions first. You can leave the mixed numbers as is if you're adding or subtracting like you did on 22 and 23. We didn't change those mixed numbers to improper fractions. But if you're multiplying or dividing these mixed numbers, I need to change them to improper fractions first. Okay? So to change a mixed number to an improper fraction, all you do is multiply your denominator times the whole number. So 2 times 2 is 4. And then you're going to add in the top number. So 2 times 2 is 4. If you add the top number, you get 5. So I'm going to write this as 5 over 2. Keep your denominator. Here you're going to say 1 times 3 is 3. And then you're going to add in your top number. So I'm going to add in 2. So I get 5. So it's going to be times 5 over 3. Let me make that one look better. All right. So now you can do top times top. Top times top, that'll be 25 over 6. But that's improper. The top number is bigger. So what you'll do is this will go in the house, and this will go out. So 6 goes in and 25 goes out. I'm going to skip count by 6. The closest I can get to 25 is 24. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 6. And bring down the 1. So this ends up being 6. Excuse me, not 6. But you have the whole number 4. And then it goes to 1 over 6. 4 and 1, 6. Let's take a look at 27. I'm going to change this to an improper fraction. Well, 3 times 1 is 3. If I add in the 2, I get 5. So I'm going to write this as 5 over 3. You always get the same bottom number. Divided by 4/5. But it's division. So if it's division, once you get it set up, once you get rid of the mixed numbers, you need to keep, change, and flip. So I'm going to keep the 5 over 3. I'm going to change division to multiplication. I'm going to flip this, making it 5 over 4. And then I can do top times top, which is 25, and bottom times bottom, which it will give me 12. This will go in the house, and this will go outside of the house. It's improper. Let me skip count by 12. 12, 24, 36, 48, and so forth. I can get 2 groups of 12 out of 24, out of 25. And the remainder is a 1. So this is going to end up being 2, and then it goes to a 1, and then it goes to 12. Now you can change that to a decimal by adding a decimal and a 0 if you want to, and bringing that decimal up, but you don't have to, okay? You can just leave these as mixed numbers for me. So this is 2 and 1/12. All right, I want to quickly look at some of these since we're on division. If I ask you to change a fraction to a decimal, like in 13, it's very simple. This goes in and that goes out. Basically, it's called TIBO, top in, bottom out. We've discussed this. But if I ask you to change it to a decimal, you need a decimal. So add your own decimal. But once you add a decimal, add a 0 and bring that decimal up. And let's skip count by 5 a few times. Okay? All right, now you start dividing. 5 won't go into 3, so you put a 0. Subtract and bring down. And let's repeat the process. How many times will 5 go into 30? Exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. There's your remainder of 0. So this is 0.6. Okay? That's all you do to change a fraction to a decimal. And if you need to add more zeros, then add more zeros until you get a remainder of 0 here. All right, let's take a look at something like, let me make up one. Let's do 1/8. That goes in and that goes out. I really don't care about this right now, but we need to know how to change fractions to decimals, okay? All right, so add a decimal and a 0. Bring your decimal up. Skip count by 8. So we can see how many groups of 8 we can get out of whatever we have. All right, how many groups of 8 can you get out of 1? None. How many groups of 8 can you get out of 10? Only 1. 10 minus 8 is 2. Add a 0 and bring it down. Well, how many groups of 8 can you get out of 20? Well, you can get 2. Well, 8 groups of 2 is 16, so I'm going to subtract that 16. Add a 0 and bring it down. Then you're going to say, well, how many groups of 8 can you get out of 40? Well, that's exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1/8 is 125 thousandths written as a decimal. Sometimes these decimals will be repeating. For instance, if I gave you 5/9, and you need to write this in your notes. Add your decimal and your 0. You see what I'm talking about. Now I won't go into 5, so if I skip count by 9s, the smallest multiple is 9, so now I won't go into 5. How many times will 9 go into 50 without going over? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you subtract, you keep getting 50 when you bring down the 0. So you're going to keep getting 9 goes into 55 times. You're just going to keep getting that. But when this number up here in scholar quotient keeps repeating, what you do is you just write that repeating digit once. Well, the 5 is repeating, so only write it once and put bar notation. Or you can write it 3 times and then put dot, dot, dot. Okay, that's what we call a repeating decimal. All right, guys, you're going to try the practice, but this video is available, so if you need to go back and watch it or look at your notes again, then you may. You got a 30-minute practice session, okay? At that time, I'm going to be able to help you. All right, thank you.